In Japan, textiles have been used as a form of art and expression for centuries, and the kimono is the most recognizable example of this. When studying the art of Japan, a more in-depth look at this influential art form and industry should be included, as it is still a part of Japanese culture to this day. The example I have chosen shows several different techniques in the creation of these iconic garments. Each technique should be included in the curriculum as they were an important part of the Japanese economy and are still used currently. This example shown here is located at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. The first ancestor of the kimono dates back to the Heian period from 794 to 1192. Straight cuts of fabric were sewn together to create a practical garment that could fit every body type and could be easily folded and stored. By the Edo period, from 1603 to 1868, it evolved into a unisex garment called a kasode, meaning small sleeves. Only from the Meiji period, from 1686 to 1912, onward was it called a kimono. Before the arrival of Western clothing in the late 19th century, the kimono was everyday dress for both men and women. Now kimonos are typically worn only for important events like weddings, funerals, coming-of-age ceremonies, and tea ceremonies. Going back to the Edo period, which was known as the last era of traditional Japan, the culture was developed with almost no foreign influence. The kasode was a key element of what it meant to be Japanese, as every Japanese person wore it regardless of age, gender, or social class. The style, motif, fabric, technique, and color explained who you were, and there were fairly rigid codes surrounding these garments. For example, cherry blossoms symbolized feminine beauty and were worn by women in the summer for leisure. The use of kanji or Chinese characters and scenes from Chinese and Japanese literature showed your literary prowess. There were so many intricacies involved in the making of these garments that design books called Hinagata Ban were needed. Pictured here are some excerpts from the Art Institute of Chicago's museum studies showing images from these pattern design books. Weaving is the primary method for creating the fabric used for kimonos, and the process of silk weaving was brought to Japan from Korea. During the Genroku era, from 1688 to 1704, silk weaving grew to be the largest industry in Kyoto. Nishijin ori is the traditional woven textile produced in the Nishijin district of Kyoto. After the capital was moved from Kyoto to Tokyo, the Kyoto-based weavers had to compete to stay relevant and successful. Nishijin weavers went to France and Austria to advance their weaving skills, and it was there that they were introduced to the jacquard power loom, pictured below, which enabled easier mass production. The production of the Nishijin ori has continued its success into the modern day, and these intricate textiles are still known throughout the world. Shibori is a common method for decorating and is one of the oldest indigo dye techniques in Japan. Shibori dyeing originated in China and gained popularity in Japan during the Edo period, especially with those in the lower classes who needed an alternative to the more expensive silks. Shibori dyers used thread, rods, or found objects to isolate small, repeated points in the fabric. The fabric is then compressed using these objects to resist the dye to create these intricate patterns. Another form of resist dyeing, called yuzin, is also common in the making of kimonos. Rice paste is applied to the fabric, forming a design, and after dyeing, the resist is removed and the design is left behind. The kimono is still important in post-Edo Japan. The use of the garment has kept part of traditional Japan alive in a time of rapid modernization and foreign influence. This example from the Edo period exemplifies the time and care that was involved in creating these culturally significant objects and several techniques that were used to create them.